Welcome to the just barely after the middle of the season edition of Sharing Sox. I'm Southside Sox duty geezer Leigh Allan, and with me my son and West Coast correspondent Will. And this edition, last edition, it was my turn to have COVID. This time it's Will's turn to have COVID. How I transmitted it to him from 2,000 miles away, I don't know, but watch out for that if you know anybody 2,000 miles from you who's sick. But
I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it sounds like a 5G kind of thing to me.
It could be. You know, those towers.
They're tricky. Your COVID bounced off that tower, which sent it to here, which sent it to my computer through the Sharing Sox podcast. So we're kind of back to where you gave it to me. But that's okay because, you know, theoretically I'll have some minor immunity at least after this is over. But yes, still very much recovering. But here we are back on Sharing Sox.
And we are recording on June 30th before the final game of the Colorado series. So the White Sox at this point have a 3-game winning streak going. And in the final game, and Colorado's awful. I've watched 2 of these games. The final game has Garrett Crochet against a lefty with an ERA of almost 10. And I know ERAs get exaggerated for Rockies pitchers because of the atmosphere, literally, that they pitch in. But 10 is still, I think it's 9.55 for Friedland. I'm saying it's going to be a 4-game winning streak. Then the next series is at Cleveland, and I'm saying it's going to be a 4-game winning streak. But,
I mean, I feel like the Rockies are single-handedly destroying my hopes of breaking the record.
Breaking the record, yeah, it's making it rough. And I think this is a case. I think now if things went steadily with the same crew for the rest of the season, the Rockies have got Miami coming up. I mean, breaking once, it's hard to lose 120 games. I mean, that's why only one team has done it in 125 years. That's thousands of team years of play. It's tough. But if they are successful in trading in the next 30 days, then making 120 may be possible. If you don't have Garrett Crochet and you don't have Eric Fetty and you don't have Tommy Pham and you don't have Paul DeJong, who's by far your big home run hitter, which is amazing. And you don't have...
Luis is catching up.
Michael Kopech. Speaking of Luis, yesterday, 470 feet. And I have to give credit to Major League Baseball on this, because I don't give much credit to Major League Baseball. I thought, well, I'm going to look up, because our main announcer being incompetent, they didn't say where that rates on the season. So I thought, I'll look it up and find out what the longest home runs are this season. It's bound to be somewhere, I guess. And sure enough, MLB.com has top 10 longest home runs of the year. So I start clicking through. And I did this within an hour of the time that Luis hit the 470-footer. I start clicking through 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5, and there he is.
Number 5?
The number 5, but within an hour of the time he hit it. So obviously no humans were involved because that was a Saturday afternoon. It's automatically programmed in when somebody hits that distance. It goes into that scenario, and it kicks everybody else has to get kicked back. 6 through 10 are now, 5 through 10 are now, 6 through 11. So 11 has to disappear. I give him credit for being that quick on the stats.
Yeah, I mean, it's AI, so let's temper our credit a little bit. But that is really quick. That's great. I'm a little surprised it was. Do you say it was 5th?
Yeah, 5th longest.
Wow.
And the others,
470 only gets you 5th longest.
And I didn't, my fault, I didn't go on to the top 4 to see how long they were, but the ones behind it were like 469, 468. They were all in a bunch.
I think Ohtani has hit one in the 75 range. Maybe Tatis Jr. as well. But I can't remember. It's crazy that 470 only gets you 5th. I mean, that is a monster home run.
Oh, to watch it, it was monstrous. I mean, you hang one. Luis has his problems. I mean, he's barely hitting 200, And he has the problem that he chases. He chases and he chases and he chases. But you hang one over the plate to him, and you might as well just turn and watch and see how far it goes.
I don't understand why you would ever throw a breaking ball over the plate to Luis Robert Jr.
No, I think it's just a mistake. What was happening was Quantrill was the pitcher, and he's a good pitcher. But
he's been around.
I mean, the Sox have faced him many, many times because of his years in Cleveland. But it was 86 degrees and really muggy. And I think he just got worn out. It got to the fifth inning is when Luis hit his, and they're sixth. They left him in, and that's really why the Sox lost the game. I wrote a piece saying I was covering the game, and my wrap up is that Bud Black proved that White Sox managers aren't the only idiots in the dugout because he just let him go.
Well,
but then, of course, they brought in the relievers, and the relievers,
exactly.
when you see the relievers, you go, well, maybe you have to let him go.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, it's easy to say, I can't believe you left that guy in until you look at who's coming in, and he's got a
Oh, my God, the relievers were unbelievable. The first reliever was fine, and then they brought in some guy who I don't think has gotten anybody out all year. And then they were behind, so they brought in a guy who's never pitched in the major leagues and was obviously scared to death. He had wild pitches that almost went the dugout.
I think the Rockies are a worse team. I do. But I don't know that they're going to be a worse team after the trades have happened. I think after
they don't really have anybody like the Sox. I mean, the Sox, everything you read, the Sox are in the driver's seat. Although I wish they'd drive fast. I'll bring this up to you. Were I, and I wrote a piece on this, but we'll ask you an opinion is, were I say the Dodgers or the Yankees or Baltimore or Atlanta or even Milwaukee or Cleveland, any team that knows they're going to the playoffs, they know they're going, barring atomic war, they're going to the playoffs. I would want Garrett Crochet today. And I would make an offer for Garrett Crochet and say, this is my offer. It's not getting any better. If you don't take it up in the next 48 hours, we're done. Because I want control of Crochet. The Sox are doing okay at limiting his use. They've spread it out. He's pitching the day that we're talking on an extra day's rest, and they're limiting how many pitches. But I want that control. I want to be, because I don't care that much. I want Garrett Crochet in the season. That's nice. That I only really care about October. I want him on the mound in October as my number 1 or 2 pitcher. And I don't want him worn out. And so, if I have control, I can skip a turn. I can put him on once a week and 60 pitches. I can extend how many pitches he does to get him going that way. Well, the next time I rest him more. I can control his bullpen days. I want that control. And if I can control it from the beginning of July instead of the end of July, I am much, much better off. I want him now.
Yeah, I think the reason that doesn't happen is the other teams don't have any of the leverage. So they can put together a deal and say, this is what it is. But there's no reason for the White Sox to say, sure, we'll take it. It's possible that those things are happening behind the scenes and we don't even know about it. For the White Sox to take a deal on June 30th, it would have to be insanely good.
Oh, I think you have to make a very good offer. You make a very good offer and say, that's it.
It has to be the best possible offer. The way the White Sox have to see it is this offer going to be better than what we're going to get on July 29th? And that's going to have to be a really crazy offer because Crochet has just become so clearly the most desirable thing on the market. It's not like we're dealing with the third or fourth most desirable guy. Crochet's number 1. Crochet is the guy that teams are going to want and need. And I understand what you're saying about making an offer to get control of him sooner rather than later. But I think that offer has to be almost comically big to get the White, because everybody's premium at the end of July is massive. Everybody's upcharge at the end of July is absolutely massive. So if you're going to say on June 30th, I'm going to beat what you're going to get at the end of July, it's going to be an even higher premium. And it's going to be tough to part with something that big. And I am a believer in Crochet, and I think a lot of teams are believing in Crochet now. But it's tough to say, oh, we're going to offer something, Godfather style. We're going to give them an offer they can't refuse for Garrett Crochet in June. Now, if you're a team and you're really, really serious about getting him, I do think it's a good move. I think it's a smart move to say, hey, we're going to throw in an additional top prospect to seal this deal right now. But there's nothing on the White Sox side that would tell me that they need to take that deal, or they need to not feel threatened, but feel pressured to make a deal like that happen.
I think it would only work if the team in question had, because we talk about, number 3, 11, and 14 prospects. That really doesn't matter. I mean, that's how they talk. That's how all the coverage is. What really matters is who are the individuals and what do they play and when are they going to be ready or likely to be ready for the major leagues? Because White Sox people are going to be ready next year.
Yeah.
And definitely no later than 2026. They can't take a bunch of guys from single A ball. They need guys who are AA now or AAA now, ready to go. And they specifically, for example, outfielders. I mean, if Luis Robert, I don't think he's going to go with the deadline. I think that's not going to be till next year because he's just starting to pick up now, and his worth will continue to increase. Right now, there are questions. Because he's swinging so much at everything. But incidentally, Colorado's overtaken the Sox by far in being swing terribleness. The Sox are no longer the worst in baseball. That partly because Tim's gone, but Colorado's taken over by a large margin. They swing at everything. Any rate, that's the stupidest idea. I think Luis over the winter probably will be traded, but not now. Maybe.
Yeah, I think.
And again, do you get the offer that you can't refuse? But it seems unlikely that you do.
470-foot home runs help. That was when I watched that ball leave the park. My first thought was that just helped a lot.
Yeah. It helped. There's no question.
Yeah, the big issue is exactly what you're saying. I mean, hitting 195, there's just no good way to spin that. There's no good way to say, hey, he's only hitting 195, but there is some but to it, but there's not.
But he doesn't have that many homers.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of that's because he's been out, but the homer thing certainly seems to be picking up. It definitely seems like he's hitting them at a higher rate now. So I do think that is getting to where teams would want it to be. But I think you're right that if you get rid of Luis Robert right now, it's not going to get you all that much compared to what.
Although he's auditioning well. I mean, his center field play is very lively. He's getting everything.
I think there's a world where if Luis Robert has a great 3 weeks ahead of him, where you're selling him for an absolute fortune. I do think that is a possibility, even a strong possibility, but he's got to show some consistency over the next 3 weeks if they're going to get a really high price for him. And if you're not going to get a really high price for him, you're not going to get rid of him.
Absolutely. No, you want everybody's top 14 prospects in there. So, yeah.
I mean, you at least when it comes to a guy like Luis Robert, you probably want prospects 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9, and a major leaguer who can play. But you're not going to get that today. There's a possibility you could get that 3 weeks from now. I don't know, but he does. If he can get back in the rhythm after coming off the injured list, I still feel like he's not totally in rhythm. His defense is looking really good. Power is clearly starting to come back. So I do think there's a world where in 3 weeks, Luis's batting average is up in the 230, 240 range. And if he can get there, then he's worth a lot more if he can get to that area than he is at 195. But Crochet is just showing to be an absolute. I mean, the guy you have to get at the deadline if you are a contender in need of pitching. I mean, who isn't in need of left-handed pitching? That's the other thing is like guys
and starting pitching.
Starting
Who can go deep.
Left-handed pitching who can get you 6 innings these days. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's the gold mine of what you want. The only thing the White Sox, you just have to be worried that he's going to get hurt at any second.
Yep.
If he gets hurt,
they are starting to be more careful. And we all know he's going to wear. We don't know he's going to wear out. We know there's a 90% chance he's going to wear out this season if you're not very careful, because he's already pitched far more innings than all the innings he pitched in the last 3 years combined. So,
right.
And that is, Steve Stone will tell you over and over and over, you can't suddenly extend a pitcher a whole bunch like that. Now, Crochet's strong. He certainly showed no weakness. His fastball is exactly where it was 2 months ago, if not better. He's cruising right along. But even at that, you want to be. That's why I say another team, if they could, would want control. Opposite end, speaking of somebody whose name was not in the original White Sox are going to trade this guy thing, but has come up in the last couple of weeks, is Andrew Vaughn. I'm not a great Andrew Vaughn fan, as you know. And I think from the Sox perspective, trading Vaughn now would be really good. He's had an incredible June. June is always his best month by far. I don't know why, but it is. He had obviously horrible April and May, but the June was, always better than any other month. It's way better than any Junes he's had. He's a terrible second half player. He wears down. It's happened 3 years in a row, and it's likely to happen for a fourth. Right now, he's hot. Get something decent for Andrew Vaughn right now. Now, obviously, the other teams know that he has bad second halves, but they're all going to think, this time we know how to keep that from happening because we're smarter. And maybe they're right. But I
think let's pause right there for a second so we can get a break in here. But I do want to come back and talk about Andrew Vaughn. I think you make a very good point. And he is a trade chip that was not a trade chip in my mind a month ago, and now certainly is. So let's take a quick break, and we will be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. Right before the break, the geezer brought up the prospect of Andrew Vaughn, which certainly seemed like was not a prospect or a trade chip of any kind, even a few weeks ago. He has gotten, I can't say red hot, but orange hot in the month.
Yeah, he's not hitting homers much, but he's hitting very well. He's going the opposite way. He had a couple more opposite field hits, key hits. I don't know, he can be key in an 11-3 game, but at the time, key hits. On Saturday.
Of qualified hitters, he is tied for the best batting average on the team with DeJong. So I think this is we talked about, can you get rid of Garrett Crochet right now? I think this is one where you as the White Sox, you kind of start making phone calls right now about Andrew Vaughn. I think you start calling around and saying, look, this guy's heating up. We believe in him. This is the time to buy. Because I think you really went from a situation where you were going to get maybe a guy who could make it to the majors for Andrew Vaughn to possibility some guys, a couple guys who likely will see some MLB time for Andrew Vaughn, just on the way things are swinging with him. Now you can roll those dice. So basically what you can do is you can try to get him out of there now, or you can see how the next 3 weeks to month go. It's possible he's heating up. It's possible that
he tends to have bad Julys. It's funny to watch. I looked at his month by month for each year, and it's the same pattern. Now, much more extreme this year, as I said. But he goes down in July. He comes back up and does okay in August. And September, he might as well not be there. I mean, he's a disaster in September, which course, for a competing team, if they're looking for somebody to be good in October,
hey, we don't know. We don't know if he's good in October.
Yeah, he's never been there.
I would just say that. It'd be like, look, he's usually bad in September, which means he's probably good in October. We just don't know. We've never seen it. I definitely think if anyone's going to offer you anything decent for Andrew Vaughn, the answer is trade Andrew Vaughn. I mean, there's no reason to hold on to Andrew Vaughn, and I don't think
especially if you keep Gavin Sheets.
Yes, for sure.
Who is an even worse first baseman, but they're both terrible. So
both terrible, and you might get a little more home runs from Gavin Sheets. And you get a left-handed bat out of it. I think if you can get rid of Vaughn, that's a great way to go. I think Paul DeJong is probably looking like a pretty decent candidate.
He's gone, and he'll get something from me. His defense is. It's weird. He was picked up strictly for defense. His defense has been awful. His offense has been great. I mean, he's only hitting 235, 240, something like that. But 15 home runs.
15 home runs. I mean, that was not on my Paul DeJong bingo card for June of 2024. I mean, you're talking about essentially a 30 homer year from Paul DeJong. If he keeps it up, that's pretty wild. And there are teams that I don't know that Paul DeJong's going to go somewhere and play shortstop, but I think there are a lot of teams that need Paul DeJong to go play somewhere else.
Like second base.
And second base. I mean, look at the Yankees. What are the Yankees doing at second base right now? If they can bring in a guy, and I think if you move DeJong to second base, he becomes one of the best second basemen in Major League Baseball. I think what we're seeing from DeJong defensively is the fact that he's kind of an old guy playing short. And I think you move him to second base, he probably becomes one of the better second basemen.
He may well, as long as the only real difficult difference is making the turn on double plays. And I'm sure a couple of days of practice on that, and he should be fine.
I think he'd ultimately be fine there. And you've got quite a few teams that need again, the Dodgers are a great candidate here. The Dodgers' middle infield is kind of in shambles. I mean, they've got nobody.
With Mookie out, yeah.
With Mookie out, Mookie's an okay shortstop. Obviously, he's going to play every single day when he's healthy, but he's going to be out another month. And, they've got no answers, seemingly. Miguel Rojas is hitting the ball very well, hitting close to 300. And is an okay fielder, but, Muncy's a terrible fielder when he's back. Lux is a terrible fielder. Rojas is an okay fielder. Betts is out. The Yankees seem to have no answer for second base. I was at a game there last week and saw Gleyber Torres make at least 2 errors, I think, at second base in the game where Baltimore put up 2 touchdowns and a field goal. So there are teams that are going to need a guy like DeJong, and the 15 homer thing stands out big time. I mean, he's leading the White Sox in home runs by 6, and it's just unexpected power from a guy like that. His walk to strikeout is pretty brutal to look at.
Yeah.
He's looking at 9 walks on close to 90 strikeouts, and his on-base percentage, for lack of a better word, totally sucks.
Why Paul DeJong? So experienced a guy, and you'd think somebody who would have needed to be dependent on base percentage through his career won't take a walk. Is really weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange, and maybe it's because he's trying to hit these home runs and he's hitting them, and that's working out for him. Let's see. He is sitting he's got a positive WAR, so at least he's got that going. Looking at these WAR stats through ESPN.
For the White Sox, it's scary.
It's scary, but I don't think there's Maldonado at -2 is pretty brutal. Benintendi at -1.8 is insane,
and deservedly so. He's earned every bit of it.
Of course he has. You don't get there by not earning it. Yeah, hitting 197, the biggest contract in White Sox history. Hitting 197,
and he's going to be on.
left
If you look
fielder.
at what's the team going to be like, first of all, after this trade deadline, very possibly if Robert went, your outfield would be Benintendi, Fletcher, and Colas.
Wow.
That's basically it. That they really, whatever they do, forget whether it's prospect number 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. With these guys, they need outfielders. They got no outfielders in the minor leagues. We got infielders in the minor leagues, but no outfielders. And they just really, really need outfielders who will be up, because next year, sure, Luis will be gone then. That's your outfield. Moncada's gone at third base. I guess he's supposed to be back at the end of the month, but he'll play 2 weeks and then he's gone again. And he's gone for sure. Nobody's trading for him, and the White Sox are going to pick up a $25 million contract. Your DH, where we had 42 guys competing for the position, will be down, particularly if they manage to trade Vaughn. Nobody's picking up Eloy. Eloy is listed as a trade candidate. I don't think anybody's taking him. He's got $16 million, so you're going to have to pay him over 5. Plus, there's a buyout on his option for next year. I don't know what that is, but you're stuck with that if you take him. I don't think anybody's taking Eloy.
He's not worth trading because you're going to have to eat all of the money. So there's and you're not going to get anything in return. I mean, maybe if you can get a decent prospect, if you're willing to eat all of the money. But the White Sox aren't going to be willing to eat all the money. So,
and he still can't run. He just hobbles around the bases. He probably should still be on the IL. He's a guy who hits the ball incredibly hard. He's always in the top couple percent in baseball, hard hit, but he also hits it on the ground all the time. And somebody just catches the ball. He's an extremely slow runner. They can drop the ball a couple times if they want to still throw him out. So I don't think you get anything there. A couple of Brebbia is going to go. Kopech's going to go.
I agree that they're both going to go as well. I don't think they're going to demand very much on the market, but you'll get something. You'll get some guys who maybe someday could make it to the MLB, but I don't really see too much interesting coming from there. Soroka's not going to go. Flexen. No one's going to want these guys at this point.
It's possible you could get a hot dog vendor for Flexen just because he's a starter, but you're not going to get much. You're not going to get anybody who's ever going to help you in the future for either one. And you might be able to get something for either one just to replace them back. I don't know. It's doubtful. I think the two are going to go. As far as relievers, the two starters go. Fortunately, seem to be building up a pretty good collection of starting pitching, which is something new and wonderful in the White Sox system. I mean, we've had good jobs again. Drew Thorpe was good. Cannon was good. He hung a couple that went along about 110 miles an hour into the bullpen, but basically was very good again on Saturday. You've got bunches of other guys down in Birmingham, this whole collection. Plus, Davis Martin is due back from Tommy John in August. So there will be starting pitching, will be great. There will be enough starting pitching next year. And some of that may drift into relief pitching. So there will be pitching next year. Not great, because it's going to be young pitching that's going to be erratic. I don't know if anybody would be around who could hit the ball. You're going to put Ramos at third. Colson Montgomery at short. He's kind of struggling in AAA ball.
Yeah,
he's okay. People still rate him very, very highly, but he's not doing what you would expect him to do at this point. Plus, I saw one prospect list that still had him in the top 10 of all of baseball that has a third baseman. This gets a little crowded. I guess Nicky Lopez will still be the second baseman next year. There's nobody to Sosa, I have no faith in. Sosa can't catch the ball. He had a good game at third the other day, but that's a rarity. He's a big defensive liability and doesn't hit well enough to make up for that. He did hit a homer yesterday, but that's his third. It's his third. It's his third one. It's not like, oh wow, the guy's got power. And then at first base, probably Sheets. But you need more than needing pitching. Usually, when you're doing a dump like the Sox are doing, the prospects that you want back are pitchers. And they still need some because they're not all going to work out. But they really, really need position players. Don't need catchers, which is great.
Yeah,
Corey Lee and Edgar Caro, I think, are going to take care of it.
The catching situation is actually one of the brighter spots looking to the future for sure.
And that kind of, the Dodgers' number one prospect is a catcher, which I think back over the winter I was going, get this guy. He's I forget his name now. He's tremendous. But they're now listing him as catcher / first baseman. So that makes it more interesting to get him because you could almost rotate. Those Caros played a tiny bit of first base in Birmingham. Rotate those guys so you had one guy as DH and one guy catching and one guy at first base, so they all get time off and don't get that worn downness that catchers inevitably get because the job's so damn hard.
Well, I mean, the Dodgers are going to list any catcher as catcher / something now because of the Will Smith contract, and Will Smith's one of the best in baseball, so they've got him locked up for a decade. I think you're going to see. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The White Sox are in the driver's seat right now, and I wasn't necessarily expecting them to be in the driver's seat when it comes to this trade deadline. And they're just so fortunate at what Crochet has done. I mean, Crochet, not only has he been the bright spot as fans to watch decent baseball this season, but what a bright spot. It stinks that you get a guy who you all kind of believed in, and then he gets hurt, and then you believe in him again, and he finally comes back, and he's looking lights out, and you're like, oh, wow, Crochet, this is so great. Let's get rid of you. When you're rooting for guys.
It's very interesting with Crochet in that he is the one who almost, though he's not in a position to do it, but almost demanded to be a starter. You didn't get this sense that the White Sox were going to take him out of the bullpen. And he was just going, I'm a starter. And boy, he's damn well been right.
Yeah, and I'm glad he did because he is a starter. And of course, nowadays it feels like most starters aren't starters because they throw 4 innings. So it's impressive. His comeback has been absolutely fantastic to watch. It's been unbelievable.
And one of the things that helps him with the innings is, first of all, he's not walking much of anybody, which keeps his pitch count down, even though he strikes out a lot of people. His pitch counts are much better than most anybody we've had on the White Sox for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's extremely impressive to average over 12 strikeouts over 9. And to not have insanely high pitch counts. It's hard to have low pitch counts if you are striking guys out in the majors these days. That's a hard.
It's just because he's just throwing strike. It was interesting to watch Cal Quantrill yesterday. I think he had 5 balls in 5 innings.
Wow.
But he made the mistake. Stuff started drifting right to the middle of the plate. And he was getting hammered. But you don't hammer Crochet, and he is just saying, give me the ball. I'm coming at you. None of this crap that we had on the White Sox for years. And this includes our Cy Young candidate of 2 years ago, Dylan Cease. They would get this 0-2 count, and then suddenly we just have to play games with everything. Crochet is not that. This is 0-2 count. Let's make it 0-3.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Which is how it should be. It's absolutely. I remember watching. I was at Dodger Stadium watching on the TV the first spring training game where Crochet was pitching, and he was facing Ohtani in the first inning, and just kind of mowed him down. And I remember watching that, thinking, holy cow, this is different. This is definitely, he is feeling something that we haven't seen him feel in a long time, or maybe ever, just in terms of confidence. Because, with Crochet, even when he was great, doing very well in 2020, he kind of felt like this shy, sort of dopey guy, who was very likable, but not necessarily kind of the hard ass that you want from a major league starter. Watching him face Shohei Ohtani in 2024, it makes your mouth water. You are like, this guy has found a swagger, and it's not arrogance. It is just straight confidence. And that's exactly what you're saying. You get a guy in an 0-2 count, and you're like, oh, if I got him 0-2, I might as well get him 0-3. That is what you want from a really great starter, and it's what you get from a really great starter. I mean, the great starters, over the years, when they get a guy 0-2, they're not thinking, how am I going to get this guy out before ball 4? They're thinking, how am I going to get this guy out before ball 1? And that is the difference between a great starter and an okay starter. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of something really great from Crochet. Seeing him face Ohtani this past week and just go after him, just fearless. And I know it's lefty on lefty. It's a little easier to be fearless against Ohtani if you're left-handed and also 7 feet tall. But it definitely was. If the White Sox are going to send videotape to other teams and say, hey, you want to buy high on this guy? I'm just sending those at bats against Ohtani. Just saying, look, here's the guy that is the best player in the history of the game, and we got a guy who is fearless, and he can't hit him.
The first time he struck him out on 3 pitches, didn't he? Was that the old 3? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just exciting to watch. And he's hitting his, he's not throwing it 101, but he's throwing it very fast, very consistently.
96, 97.
96, 97 every time, occasionally hitting 98. It's just the way the ball is traveling from hand to home plate is just looking so crisp. It's kind of like, they say you've got pitchers and you've got throwers, and Crochet looks like a guy who was a thrower has now become a pitcher. And that is very exciting to watch. So I hope he doesn't go to the Yankees. I would love to keep cheering for Garrett Crochet. Would love to see him out here in Los Angeles on the West Coast. But
I bet you've got at least a 40% chance that's where he ends up.
Oh, if I were the Dodgers, that is who I would be going for. With
you're going to have competition for sure from the Yankees, from Baltimore, possibly Milwaukee. Though I don't think that they have enough of a farm system to trade it back in. Philadelphia,
and Atlanta go for him.
Would be the other 2 teams.
Yeah, Atlanta's in a sort of pickle of they got to figure out how hard they're going to go for this thing without Acuna, which is a tricky situation. The answer is probably that they should be trying to go for it, but you never know what they're going to do. Before we leave, let's just take a quick look at what's coming up. Of course, Crochet should be taking the mound any second now. And then we're going to go to Cleveland for 3. That's a situation where I would be concerned about winning any of those games. But, Flexen versus Carrasco, probably going to go to Cleveland. But then you've got Fetty. That's looking good. And Thorpe is looking like Dylan Cease 2.0. So I think there's a good chance. Then I
think they'll take 1 out of 3.
I think they could take 1 out of 3 and maybe 2 out of 3. Then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're going to be at Miami, which, gosh, there will probably be 7 people at those games. Those could go any which way. I think that
old home week for Berger and Anderson, which is nice.
Yep. They'll probably take at least one of those. That could be a sweep. for the White Sox, it could go either way. And then we'll start creeping up towards this All-Star break with Minnesota and Pittsburgh. But that is all the time we have for today. Do you have any final thoughts before we log off?
No, I am betting that we will have another session before anybody is actually traded, but it will be interesting to see what happens in the interim.
Yeah, it will. It will. It'll be interesting to see if anyone makes the move.
Last year, I looked it up. Last year, there was one June trade of any substance, Aroldis Chapman, for Cole Reagans. That turned out to be great for both teams. Both teams got what they needed out of that. But that was the only June. It was June 30th. So we're recording on June 30th.
I have seen some predictions that they think Garrett Crochet will be selected as an All-Star as a White Sox player, but then play in the All-Star game wearing a different jersey, which has happened a couple times and would be very interesting. So we'll see what happens. But thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you next time right here on Sharing Sox.